Hi, everybody. Welcome to Lurking for Legends. We're a live video cast who speak to people from all walks of the publishing world. My co-host, Christy Stratos, David M. Kelly, and myself encourage viewers to chime in with questions for our guests or simply comment on what you hear. And tonight on Lurking for Legends, we're excited to feature eco-thriller author Sarah Kades. How are you, Sarah?
Hello. Good. Happy to be here.
Welcome to the show. And before we get started, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Well, actually, I was an archaeologist for 20 years. I love the outdoors. I love sharing the natural world with others. And I stumbled into archaeology, and then I stumbled into writing. And yeah, that's a bit about me. I actually was born and raised in the States. Met my husband on an archaeology dig in Canada, and ended up immigrating here. So that's a little different. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. So, of course, the first question I'm going to ask you is tell us what eco thrillers are.
That's a good question because it's kind of an interesting genre because when I first started hearing about it at conferences and workshops and that sort of thing, it was apocalyptic eco fiction, and that's not my natural inclination. I tend to be optimistic, and I want to inspire people with my writing. And actually have that actually undercurrent of social responsibility, not being preachy, but just really entertain readers and share perhaps new ideas and new perspectives and different ways of looking at the world, but also with hope and a love for humanity and working together. So for me, eco thrillers is bringing hope to the environmental conversation, not divisiveness or apocalyptic. Because if people are like, what's the use anyways, then they won't make changes. So
Don't read my list book then.
So my slant is perhaps overly optimistic, but that's my bend. That's natural for me. To keep trying to do what I can to move the ball forward. And one of the things I love about art is that it can gently help with that and innocuously, it's not a 2x4 upside the head. It totally can be. And I'll leave that to other artists. I like a gentler approach, maybe even a sneak attack. Yeah.
So your books are basically happy then. So it's what I'm getting from these. So
yeah, terrifying.
In my mind, books always have some kind of climax where they have to build towards a climax, and it's generally not happy unless you resolve the climax. And then, so how does this work with your upbeat type of story?
Great question, because you can't. I have to admit, for me, I savor the happy and the joy in life after surpassing challenges and obstacles, and everybody has a story, and life sometimes can kick us in the teeth. So I make sure that I have my characters really get kicked in the teeth, and I like to explore maybe taboo subjects like drug addiction and domestic violence. I wrote a nonfiction book with an active duty homicide detective that was released in 2018. And I'll be honest, that project really darkened my perspective, and writing these eco thrillers has been a way for me to process that darkness. So there is some actually quite nasty things that happen in my book, and like really deep betrayals from those who you're supposed to trust, like family and whatnot. So although there's that current of upbeat, right? Because I use romance. I use a love story to give that reader hope as I put these characters through some really crazy pain, actually. Yeah.
So, Sarah, you said, you used to be an archaeologist. So does that expertise kind of like work its way into your books?
100%. Actually, the book one of this series, of the Hearthstone series, was Kiss Me in the Rain. It's actually set in southern Alberta and northern Alberta, where I've done a lot of archaeology work. And the male lead protagonist is an archaeologist, and the female lead is a glaciologist. Although her oil guy dad doesn't know it. So it absolutely it has been a core foundation, and then both in Wild Not Broken that released the end of January, and Not an Easy Truce that's releasing the end of next month. There is archaeology. Actually, one of the artifacts I've always wanted to find was a fur trade journal. And I know most archaeologists in Canada want to find a Clovis point, and that would be awesome too. But I always wanted to find a fur trade journal. I know that's really hard under Canadian conditions. But a girl can dream. So I wrote them in actually both books 2 and 3, Wild Not Broken and Not an Easy Truce. So I love history, and I love how we can learn from history, but also pivot from history, like reserve the right to change our minds and learn from the past, and hopefully not make the same mistakes if we look at the past with clear eyes, but also a current of respect as well. Yeah.
So I noticed that you have different pen names. You have kind of like, I think it's the same name. It's just separated.
Yeah.
So you have for your eco-thrillers, it's Sarah Kades. And then for narrative nonfiction, you have Sarah Graham. And of course, we'd love to hear about your narrative nonfiction too. But on a marketing note, since you may be, I'm not sure if your subjects are the same. I'm guessing that they probably are. What made you choose a pen name for the nonfiction instead of, is it just the fact that it's nonfiction, or was there another reason?
Yeah, it's because it was nonfiction. I always knew I wanted to write nonfiction, and I first actually got into paranormal. That was my first foray into writing novellas and short stories. But I always knew that I wanted to write nonfiction as well, because I've got a super nerdy academic side too, that I knew someday I wanted to be able to nurture that side of me. And I had been advised actually for marketing to keep them separate so that readers were very clear on which Sarah they were getting. And some authors do, go so far as to have different first names as well, like completely different names. And I understand that, but I'll be honest, like that sounded like a lot of work. That sounded, like I'm Sarah first, and Kades is the fiction, the fiction, and Graham is the nonfiction. So I was advised from people I trusted in the industry to have 2 different names, and actually 2 different websites, and like 2 different social media platforms, and I just want to write. So I had done that, and then I'm like, I'm just going to be that author who amalgamates them on her website and social media, and then they know who I am because I can, direct readers, be straight up. Okay, this is my fiction, this is my nonfiction, without having to do double the work. Because as you guys know, as writers, like writing time is precious, and marketing could be 24/7, 365 if we let it. So that's it started separate, and I understand why, but then I put them all together for website and social media. Yeah.
So just following on from my question about the archaeology and everything, I mean, what's your kind of opinion about how we see archaeology portrayed in things like movies and TV? I mean, there's the whole kind of Indiana Jones tomb robbing kind of thing. It's like, how do you feel about that?
Is it not like that?
I started in academic archaeology. Like I did 5 years in academic archaeology, where although everybody had watched Indiana Jones, and like half of the archaeologists I worked with had the bullwhip, I'm not kidding, and the hat. I did not. However, about half the people did. But that's a really good question, because for me, the past is sacred and should be actually really savored and held sacred and treaded on like softly. And to actually excavate an archaeology site, you have to destroy the site. So if you don't excavate it, the artifacts and the knowledge that they can share stays in the ground, and as does the knowledge and wisdom that we can learn from it. So I've been really fortunate to work with some archaeologists who held that same sense of reverence to the past and the different peoples whose sites that we were working on. And I've worked on post-contact sites, pre-contact sites, so post and pre-contact is like in Canada is like colonization, right? When the white dudes came. So like pre and post. So I've worked in both sites, and it's fascinating actually when you have a square meter and there's different levels, like occupation levels. So you know that place was a great place, like a really good place to hang out. There was one site where the oldest artifact was 8,000 years old, and the newest one was like the late 1800s, but it was the same square unit. So like to
Wow.
me, that's just like, God, this land has nurtured us for so long, and it's nurtured the newcomers for better or worse, because like that comes with its own bag of trauma and whatnot. So for me, archaeology is a discipline to be very respectful and reverent with, and not everybody feels that, because archaeologists also I don't know if you guys know this, but as a soft science, a lot of archaeologists work really hard to be taken seriously by the hard sciences. And in that quest to be scientific, I think some of the joy and heart of stories gets diffused, like just lost in translation when you're trying to appease Western science to scientific minds when we're talking about people. And like, if you don't, that's why I love writing, because I can write. I try to put heart and soul into my characters, put them through the ringer, of course, because if it's thriller, you got to do twists and turns and like, what's going on? They're like, holy crap, whoa, like seriously, she just really, like, that's what I want to take. But I also want that that heart and soul to like be through the whole book. And I guess when we talked about my nonfiction stuff, my fiction editor, when she looked at an early draft of my nonfiction stuff, she's like, oh my God, this is so your voice, Sarah. And I'm like, no, it's supposed to be Detective Sweets. No, like this was supposed to be like a merging of both of our voices. And she's like, that's funny. It's like, well, you guys know, artists or like author voices are like the brushstrokes of a painter, like when you get used to studying them, you can identify the artist by the brushstrokes. And yeah, the same is true for an author voice. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
No, I think that's awesome, and you can hear the passion in your voice. And just to be fair to Sarah, before she came on, Sarah's had an issue with her voice today.
Yes, sorry, I don't always sound like this.
It's okay, but you've been good enough to come on. But I was wondering, and I wanted to refer to that saying that you want to be taken seriously as a scientist. It kind of reminded me, as a fantasy author, we want to be taken seriously by literary fiction authors too. Like, what we write isn't really fiction, isn't really literary stuff. But anyway, I hear the passion in your voice. And as a nonfiction author, do you go out and give talks when your voice is good? That is.
Yes, actually, yeah. Before COVID, Detective Sweet and I were super lucky to be able to do a lot of appearances. And actually, one of them, there's a youth link in Calgary, which actually supports youth crime prevention programs. And the last figure I got quoted was that through our appearances, we helped them raise $25,000 for youth crime prevention programs. And that matters to me. Like, being an author, I think, is one of the coolest jobs in the world. Although I miss field work. I really miss field work. And interacting with people. That's why I love these sorts of appearances and podcasts too, to be able to connect with others. But yeah, Detective Sweet and I have been really fortunate to be able to do a lot of talks. Yeah, and community matters, and community only matters though when people care about their communities and actually like step forward. And as much as I try to be like outgoing, sometimes like I'm just nervous and shy, and so it's nice to be able to have actually a really outgoing co-author with that who's not shy at all. So that's been good too.
And one of the places that you presented with, I understand, was the British Society of Criminology.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So again, like I mentioned, I've got an academic need to be fulfilled inside of me. And after we wrote the book, the feedback we were getting from readers was super positive and it was so humbling, because some were victim families And some actually, we even had a convict reach out with a lovely like fan mail, like just saying, yeah, that he really resonated with the book, and it was police officers like Detective Sweet. It wasn't Detective Sweet, but police officers who actually listened to him and saw the person, not the bad choices he made. Yeah, and like gave him, I guess, I don't know, believed in him enough so he could like, he borrowed their belief in him so that he could believe in himself to pivot and make changes, positive changes in his life. So hearing these stories, and then I thought, well, the police, like the public and the police, that's such a sticky topic. Like any headline, like, yeah, just read the headlines and it's such actually a traumatic topic. So I actually just Googled presentations where I could talk about arts-based approaches, and then I found that one. And so I wrote an abstract because I love, like, as I mentioned before, like art can help us gently move forward. And it's my goal and hope to write stuff that will empower people gently so they don't feel like lectured or talked at, but like gently introduce them into a dialogue or conversation and empower them to like look at their own life and what's working and what's not working. Because like we got to take inventory, right? Like I just feel that's a really productive exercise. So I saw that, wrote an abstract, and Dave was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is me. I felt compelled. Trust your spidey sense. I felt compelled to reach out. They accepted it, and I'm like, I have to do this. Like, because that was actually their what was it called? Like the theme that year was the public, like bridging the gap between the public and police, and that's the feedback we had gotten was that's what the book we had written did. That wasn't Dave's intention. His intention was to write a book legacy for his children, like why he missed so many birthdays growing up and when they were growing up and that sort of thing, which is fine. That's his jam. My jam, not as a police officer, but as an author who wanted to help communicate his messages, that ended up communicating both of our messages as we worked on the project. For me, it was totally social responsibility. Like we can start healing these things, and if I just help one person, that would be good, because I don't know how else to help, right? Like I don't know how else to be an ally. I don't know how else to. So again, trust your spidey sense. So I felt compelled to work on this project with Detective Sweet, and then I felt compelled when I saw that British Criminology conference and bridging the gap between the public and police. I'm like, art can help with that, guys. And I don't think that's happening enough, but I'm hoping there's a shift and a trend in that direction. Yeah.
So you mentioned, we were talking about the books that you wrote with Detective Sweet, and I saw on your website that you say there's an intense type A cop, then there's you, an optimistic, free-spirited author, and I was wondering how you worked together. That can be tricky, they're kind of opposites there.
It was tricky, and at first, and I think Dave would agree with this, I wore nurturing hat Sarah, because here's a veteran police officer who has attended, like he's been a homicide detective for like, I don't know, a dozen years or something crazy like that. He was in undercover work before that, like drug task force or stuff like that. Like plus a regular police officer when he first, started on the job. So he has a very, different slant and super intense and super dark, man. Like the text he would send me that to him was like normal conversation with colleagues. I'm like, Dave, like, don't, you can't send me stuff like that when I'm like hanging out with my mother-in-law. I need to be like, not in like murder mode, like in murder mindset, or like me, whatever, because he'd be like, oh, I remembered another story. I'm like, bleh. So it was funny. So I started with like nurturer Sarah, to help him feel, quite frankly, like that I was a safe space. Like we had been friends before that, but like I saw him at a writing conference, and he gave a workshop on like cop craft, and he said, if you guys ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I have learned actually when somebody offers help to just say thank you and accept it, right? Like just say okay. So I took his card, and throughout a few times a year I'd reach out, hi, what would this is my whatever book question, cop craft question. And then when it was his time to want to write a book, anyways, that's how it kind of spun out. So as the process evolved, though, then like book Sarah came out, and then we started knocking heads, like really knocking heads. But we had a strong enough like work partnership that we could both be feisty and fight for what we want, and still be friends, right? Like, and still want to keep working with each other. But it was funny, and I think I surprised him because I started as nurturing Sarah as he started, like cracking open those long sealed vaults of like stories and memories. And he's really good at compartmentalizing, and I knew that it would take he needed to have the head and heart space. That, my words, he would never use that terminology. He's like, oh, we can do this in 6 months. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not a therapist, but I'm pretty sure it's going to take longer than that to process what comes up. And I know for me, because I'd never dealt with darkness like that, like that, it would take me longer. So yeah, we totally knocked heads. Yeah, we totally knocked heads. But I think we respected each other more for it because we weren't afraid to back down. And that's when you have a solid partnership, when you can be completely yourself with them and completely honest and call them on, bullshit, and they call you on yours too. And even have that, like, I'm really mad at you right now. And like, cause I had said that, like that had come out, but like we talked it through. So that was good for me actually to have a work partner like that. Cause in environmental consulting, that's not how stuff happens. Like it's not that direct and straightforward. It's like, let's talk in like passive voice and like dance around the subject. And so I really valued his like shoot from the hips straight up. Yeah, I will add though, I actually started studying Buddhism during the process because like I knew that I just needed to refine my center. And I happened to mention in conversation and the look he gave me was like, are you for real? Like, you're the most chill person I know. And I'm like, what? No way. So yeah, very different worlds. Yeah.
Felt kind of like that was almost a lesson in friendship in a way, like
Totally.
constructive friendship,
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah, and actually, an industry friend and expert of mine suggested we do release a chapbook ahead of the main title, and we asked our publisher if she was cool with that, and she was. So I did the edits of the main book and then put together the chapbook, which was about 48 pages, like behind the scenes of writing it, and that almost broke me. And Dave couldn't help, right? Because that, like, he was on the front end of like structure and like kind of raw content, and then the post publication, with appearances and stuff like that. But I was the one that had to work on the edits and pull together the chapbook because that's my strength, right? And the timeline was so tight because we added that so late. So I almost broke. I did almost break, but I didn't break. Or if I did, I put myself back together. So yeah, we're good. Mm-hmm.
So Sarah, obviously, in terms of those books, there was a lot involved behind the scenes. I mean, is that something that's common to most of your books, that you have to do a lot of research for them?
I actually I pantser. I pantser a lot. So for folks if they don't know what that is, that's usually I'm not sure what I'm going to write until the characters lead me and tell me, as opposed to those who plot. And I've tried plotting because it sounds way more efficient. It's just not how my head works. Totally not linear. And Dave was super linear. Oh my God. I totally just lost my train of thought, which is kind of funny, like that we're talking about being non-linear. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
I was just asking whether, you do a lot of research normally for your
yes.
books.
I research on the fly. Yeah. So it actually feels like I'm channeling characters, and that probably sounds a little bananas, but I have to get to know the characters and get to know their heart and soul and motivations and what makes them tick. And then they lead me on like the craziest ride ever. And then they come up with stuff and I have to research it. So for instance, I actually have a bad guy who's a sommelier on the side of his awful criminal activity. And there's actually a very human component to that part of him. But I don't know anything about sommeliers, like wine. A wine sommelier. So I had to research it, which was super fun. And so I research as much as I think I need to be able to communicate it effectively. Because once I read a fiction book, and it's an archaeology component, and the author, who was one of my favorites at the time, she had all the technical terms accurate, but she didn't have the cadence accurate. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm like, well, that's actually not exactly how we say it. The cadence was off. And so after having that experience as a reader, I want to do enough research where I don't, make people who know about sommeliers or RCMP or that's where, I want to do enough research so that it sounds authentic and real and accurate. Yeah. So I do a lot of internet searching as I write, and man, there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. But I also am a huge fan of the library and like old school books. So, and Calgary has amazing libraries and fantastic librarians. So I can get books. Yeah. I can get weird titles that, they ship away from far away to find them for me. So yeah, and I'm a nerd. I love history and I love researching. So my only concern is that I research too much instead of writing, getting the words I need in each day. Yeah.
A lot of times you end up with so much extra research just to hone it down, to that small. I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The same along the lines of what you were saying with the sommelier thing. I had this thing in my next Dr. Trayana collection book with cigars in the 1860s, and the research is ridiculous. I mean, I'm finding all kinds of stuff I never needed,
Yeah, but it's cool.
You learn all that stuff and then you kind of funnel it down, right? And eventually you may use it, but as you said, you do get lost there a little bit.
But I will say that's one of the reasons I love reading fiction, because I'm being entertained with a story, hopefully a great one, and learning stuff as I go. There was actually one time my husband said, well, let's get shrimp, like big shrimp. And this was, I don't know, we were in our 20s or something and just still learning how to cook. And he's like, do you know how to devein shrimp? And I'm like, it's in a book, hang on. And so I ran upstairs and I got this fiction novel that happened to talk about, is it shucking shrimp or whatever it is? And he's like, okay, I would not have looked to a novel for that advice, but it worked. So that's just a small thing, but that's what I like. I like to include that detail to get people kind of drawn into professions or themes or topics that perhaps they don't know about. And actually, one of my husband's old work, I guess, colleagues, he actually said, Sarah, I love reading your books. It's like a romance meets Clive Cussler, because it's like that technical stuff and that he really likes, but he's like, but it like there's a romance story in it too. So, yeah, and research gets us there.
That's a cool combo. Not to monopolize you, but I was wondering, like earlier you had said when David asked you about the your archaeology and things along those lines, you were saying that it's important to be like gentle with things and like care about them, and of course that makes a lot of sense. So I wanted to ask you if there's anything in particular. I think you mentioned before something that you would love to acquire or that would mean a lot to you to acquire, something along those lines. And I wondered, like, we're not writing the same genre at all. I'm writing historical fiction in the Victorian era, so it's like totally different from what you're writing, but I feel the same way about history and how much it matters. And there are a lot of things that I like to get my hands on physically and like buy or borrow or whatever. And certain things mean a lot to me. And I wondered if you had anything like that, either from researching these books or just finds that you have from your archaeological days.
Well, all this, like all the artifacts have to be turned into whatever province or state you're working in. So I don't have any artifacts, but actually a proper fountain pen, like a nib and like pen in the nib and the ink where you dip it. When characters are confounding me or they're I don't understand them enough. Sometimes I slow it down and just take that pen and ink and paper and just start having a conversation with them and seeing what comes up. And my pacing, I like to have really, really, really fast because I tend to get bored quickly. So I like to have my pacing fast. But with, excuse me, can I actually just mute a sec while I cough? I don't want to cough in front of
Certainly, yeah. We'll get Dave to sing us a couple of notes. Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Okay, this is live, guys.
No worries. They say it's just for fun. It's all about you. So
Thank you. Yeah. So in order to find that fast pace and cadence, I actually realized for me, I have to slow it down and kind of get back to basics to explore more and see actually what these characters are trying to teach me and learn from. Old compasses also fascinate me. I don't know why, they just do. So I have a contemporary compass. I don't have an old compass. So I actually sometimes just scroll pictures of old compasses, and I'm not sure where that comes from, but it works. So there you go. I also love museums. I know that there's just like zoos, museums, like there's good and bad to them and stuff. And actually in Wild Not Broken, book 2, there's one of my archaeology mentors had talked about Canadiana and Americana that are in like homes in the UK, that to them it's just family heirlooms, but to us over here it's like history, right? And so when he talked about that, like the essentially unrecorded Canadiana and Americana sitting, across the Atlantic, and the people who own it not not remembering or not recognizing the universal value in sharing those, right? Because to them it's just family stuff. So that too, I want to be cognizant of who gets artifacts and what's the public interest with artifacts and what's the right answer, right? Like what's the right answer for artifacts? And I don't have the answers. Those are bigger questions than I know how to answer. So I just try to be respectful as I navigate. But yeah, I guess the best one is the pen and ink. Actually, this just popped in my head. Miss Scarlet and the Duke, Victorian England. I don't write that, but sometimes when I just need that like hit of I guess video art or cinematography, I've really resonated with that one. So it's nothing that I write at all, but seeing art that I resonate with that's made well, I also find very inspiring. And that's an example of one. Mm-hmm.
And recently, Christy, just sort of talking to you sort of for a moment, it's like you came up with, you found your own kind of special artifact, didn't you? Was it the journal that you found? What was it?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Yes, that's awesome, David. Yeah, I really, really like Victorian diaries, and you just learn so much from them, of course.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because no matter what time period, like what decade you are in the Victorian era, the first thing they always say in a diary is the weather. Every time. Everyone, it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. But anyway, so I acquired these blacksmith journals, ledgers and journals. And so some of it is business stuff, and you can see how much it costs to do these different things and who they worked with and everything. And then he's got a bunch of, it's obviously a male for that time, a bunch of diary entries just among them, sometimes like sideways, even down the page on the side of like the work stuff that he's got. It's amazing. So you're asking where I get that. I do attend a lot of online auctions and stuff like that with auction houses to see where I can dig up, so to speak, and that's where I get that stuff. I also have a nice little, it's funny because the blacksmith one is in like these big ledgers that are heavy and big, and I have this farm girl one, and they're all these little bitty, little tiny, things, little tiny writing, so it's amazing. And I eat that stuff up. I could read it day and night. You
Yeah.
know, even things like World War II letters. I love all of it. It
Oh,
doesn't even have
yeah.
to be in my time period, but it's just
Yeah.
even more valuable if it is in my time
Totally.
period.
And you actually, that reminds me too, like perspective is also really important to consider. I actually was super fortunate to go to school in Scotland for a semester and still visit my host parents from that time and rugby friends. And what they consider an artifact and what we consider an artifact in the new world, and I know that is a charged term completely. Yeah, it's incredible. And I actually included that because that perspective's like, I have Lillian's character, like she's on a ladder in the family estate home in the library, you know, checking out old books. And in Canada, that would be in a museum and like behind glass because it's so old. And for her, she's still, you know, tromping up it because everything's old. And actually, I was interviewed by actually the University of Lincoln, where I presented at that. They hosted that British Society of Criminology conference. I was interviewed by their radio station, and I told, like, it came up that I like stumbled across the Magna Carta and the Charter of the Forest while in Lincoln, and I didn't realize, like, I was so busy I didn't have time to like do research before I went on that trip to present. But I had a day to go exploring, and then I'm like, oh my God, the Magna Carta, like, dude, the Magna Carta. And the host was one of the profs, and he's like, I can't remember what he said, but you know, it was to the effect of, yeah, that's really not a big deal for us because like it's so commonplace for us, you know, something from 1217 or whatever it was. Yeah, but for me, I thought I had just stumbled on just something so, again, sacred and like, whoa. And yeah, just his like, oh yeah, that's kind of how we roll. We don't make a big deal out of it. So
Wow, yeah.
yeah, so that perspective. Also, again, nerd. I watch not as many shows, English archaeology shows or British archaeology shows as my husband, but they'll like excavate through, like get rid of newer artifacts, and like I don't know, I can't remember which occupations they were, just to get to the old stuff, like really old stuff. And once you take an artifact out of situ, right, like the knowledge that you can get is gone. It's destroyed, right? Like it's a relationship of the artifacts you find. Like it's not only the artifact that's important, it's the relationship of the artifacts to other artifacts, to the space, to the landscapes, that sort of thing. And yeah, they just plowed through, like they bulldozed the top. I can't remember how many layers of occupations, like several hundreds of years. And that's okay because like they're like, we kind of know all we're gonna know about those time periods, so we don't have to, you know, we don't really have to, you know, dig those. We can just. And here I'm like, oh my God, all artifacts are sacred. What's going on? But then yeah, I guess from a business or like government regulation standpoint, they're like, if we did that with everything, like where would we keep it all? So,
yeah, I visited Turkey quite a few years ago. My brother used to live there, and there is like so much history in the area, and so many of these kind of like ancient sort of like buildings and carvings and so on, and there's so much of it they literally just like bulldoze straight through it. You know, they just don't care. It's like, oh, we've got so much. It's like, why would we worry about it? You know, and it's like, and you're thinking, wow, these are like priceless artifacts of like a completely different age, and it's just there, you know, with like the we need space for a building.
And we don't know what we don't know, so like who knows with a new interpretation of something or fresh eyes looking at it, because that does happen in archaeology, like fresh eyes, you know, new grad students look at stuff that had been considered truths, and then they're like, are you sure? I know I'm supposed to just believe you and take this as gospel, but I actually think this because of this, and this data and this information that came through and these sites and these interpretations of these sites, blah, blah, blah. So never be afraid to change your mind or realize that, to reevaluate, you know, what's considered true or truths, whether that's science or history or whatever.
I mean, there was the famous case of Heinrich Schliemann, wasn't there, who bulldozed his way through lots of layers of Troy that he was actually searching for.
Oh gosh. Come on, guys.
Like,
And that's why, like, that soft, I was gonna say, like, a delicate hand, like a mindfulness. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it for glory, or is it to expand our knowledge base? Is it to learn, is it to learn and understand cultures and people and understand history more? Or is it for glory? Because, like, glory is like a short fuse, and there's no lasting, like, to me, that's not legacy. To me, actually taking the time and effort to understand something, to me, I appreciate the long game, though. To me, that's more fulfilling. And I guess different strokes for different folks. And if we all, were the same, it'd be super boring. But yeah, I have a different reverence for artifacts, which, but with regulators, like, there's logistics. Where are we going to put all these artifacts? So, yeah.
It kills me awesome. When you're saying, Sarah, this person saying to you, we know everything we already can know about that time period. And to me, I'm always thinking,
no, you don't.
You never know everything.
It's like, how arrogant, right? Like,
yeah.
Right? Like, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is that space in our head to question and the curiosity to, like, do I know what I'm talking about? Well, let me listen and go down those rabbit holes to see what other people say, but like, also weigh, like, okay, that's maybe a little too far-fetched. Don't believe everything you read online, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, just to consider what's out there and to consider that we don't know everything. Yeah, because if we did, like, oh, how boring would that be?
Yeah.
No exploring.
So I'm really digging this conversation. Drum roll.
Oh dear.
Sorry. So before we wrap you up, I see we're at around 45 now. I was curious, on your website, when you first go onto your website, you have the catchphrase, and we were talking about catchphrases a few times in the show over the last month about David has a real one. I love the one on his book, Your Future is About to Get Action-Packed. You have on your website, Rewild Yourself.
Yeah.
Does that have some kind of twisted meaning, or does it have a double meaning?
It does. So there is, rewilding is in the, I guess, ecological community world. There's, like, allowing nature to go back to nature and heal itself and heal from pollution, to, like, let spaces go back to their wild self, because Mama Earth will, if given the time and space, she'll heal herself, right? So that it's a bit of that. But for me, I want to write books that inspire people to explore their inner wild nature, because I guess my experience is, like, I was taught to be a certain way. I was told to believe certain things. And, you go through life and then you're like, that really doesn't work for me. So it feels like I've I've lived in lots of countries. And I actually had a senior archaeologist boss once go, I don't buy it that people have to, like, go far away to, like, find themselves. But for me, when you take yourself out of normal or familiar, you actually see who you really are, right? Because you, like, strip down everything else, and you can for me, in my experience, I could actually meet myself. And as I write these books, I actually realize that I'm getting to know layers of myself that I hadn't known before, and I'm hoping readers will have their own personal experience like that, where they I guess, deep dive into themselves as they read the book. And that's what I think when I write the book club questions. Because I like form and function, give readers tools to go deeper and deep dive within themselves to rewild themselves, just like Mama Earth knows how to rewild herself. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that, or...
No, I love that. I don't even have a tagline. I need a tagline. And you're inspiring me. And so is David. I love David.
I love David.
Yeah, too, it's so good.
So
I don't know where that came from. It was just kind of like one of those things. It just kind of came out of the blue.
It looks great on a T-shirt too. I've seen it on a T-shirt. It looks really cool.
Yeah, the future's about to get a lot more action-packed.
Love it. And that's the cool part, right? When you're like, I don't know where it came from. It just did. And that's why yeah, for me, writing's kind of like channeling. I don't know what we're channeling, but it's really cool. It's really cool.
So Not an Easy Truce is coming out on June 21st,
Yep.
2022.
Yep.
So that's not long. That's
super soon.
less than a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so what's after that?
Loyal to You, book 4.
Oh, I thought you were being loyal to me. Okay.
Oh,
Book 4. That's
the
awesome.
next book. Yeah, the next book. I am getting the hankering to write more nonfiction, but I want to write these 5 books. But man, I actually have some of my villains who are like, Sarah, like the redemption, like the redemption characters. And so I'm like, that sounds good. Yeah. But the next one will be Loyal to You, coming out probably early December of this year.
Okay, awesome. So your website's up on our feed here.
Awesome.
And where else can we find your books if we're looking for them?
Actually, all over. There's universal links on my website, which if people know, it's what's it called? Books to Read, and then it actually just has links to all the different vendors. But of course, Amazon, Indigo. It can be ordered in anywhere, and online, or I guess for ebooks, Kindle, Kobo, Nook, Apple, Google. I can't remember all of them.
So you're gone wide, so they'll be everywhere, for sure.
Yeah, everywhere. Yep. Or your library. I love libraries, super supportive of libraries, and they're also environmentally friendly. So if you want to read them, ask your librarian to order it in, or ebook or print.
Perfect. So for Dave, Christy, myself, thank you for being here tonight. We really enjoyed talking to you, and I love the passion you have for what you do. You can clearly hear it in your voice, and that's awesome. Even though your voice isn't what it should be, it still comes through. So you did a great job.
Thank you.
And so before we leave, Christy, what's new in the Christy Stratosphere?
Oh, I don't have nearly as many updates as I did last time. So not a whole lot new here. I'm trying to get my newsletter out. That is a struggle for me sometimes.
I hear you.
And I am working right now most heavily on the second Grimoire Society's book. So I'm not going to put it up on Kindle Vella until I have a few episodes, and then I'll start, rolling them out. So for people who like that series, the second one will be coming out. I could not give you a date, but let's hope in like the next couple of months.
Awesome.
And I'm working on the paperback formatting for that as well. So that's kind of where we are now.
That's always fun, isn't it? Yeah. And how about Dave? What's new in the David Kelly universe?
Well, what's new for me is that the second Logan Two Feathers book is on schedule for launching June 7th. And I have just finished the ebook and print formatting, so it's all ready to go.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I got to get a signed copy for the Library Hall of Fame very soon. So I'll see you at one of the writing events this summer, and I'll pick one up from you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So with me, Windwalker Book 3 in the Highcliffe Guardian series is nearing completion. It's starting to ramp up into the final climax, so I'm getting excited about that. It's finally all starting to come together. Awesome. And like I said last week, I always struggle trying to get to that final bit to get the book to just suddenly take off at the very end, and it's hitting that spot now, so the writing's coming a lot easier, and it should be done soon. So looking forward to that. And today I just signed up for my 20th book signing event for this year. It's just a tiny little book festival that's happening about 20 minutes from my front door. I found it on Facebook.
Right on.
Yeah, so it's going to happen in a month, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So it's nice to get back out there now that our restrictions are starting to lift up here in Canada. So
yeah, totally.
So next week on Lurking for Legends,
I seriously need to move south.
Yes, you do, Dave. You certainly do. It's tough driving 5 hours to get to a book event. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So next week on Lurking for Legends, we're going to have science fiction and romance author Paula L. Jones, and I'm thinking Joe Ballin and Dolly will like to listen in on this episode, Dave. So even if you can't join us as one of our hosts next week, I think Joe and Dolly might want to tune in. Those are two of Dave's characters. Science fiction, romance. That sounds. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's pretty cool. Romance sells for sure. So anyway, Paula is a former digital journalist, television news producer, and novelist from Louisiana. She enjoys writing stories about people of various backgrounds, and I struggled with this word when I was reading before. They're existential. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm not going to say
existential.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ellen.
That's why I write and I don't speak. Quest to relate to others as they gradually discover the power of love. And it sounds very interesting.
Who is it again,
Yeah.
Richard?
I'm not saying it
Richard?
again.
Sorry, Richard, who was it again?
Paula L. Jones.
Ella Jones.
I know Paula from Twitter.
From Twitter. Oh, awesome.
Excellent.
Well, you can welcome her to our show next week. So, so thank you again, Sarah, for being with us tonight. We really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Sarah.
guys.
So for Christy, Dave, and myself, we hope everyone has a safe and healthy week ahead. Until we meet again, take good care.
See ya.
Bye.